I was coming to that because we've seen several instances where two cars, get involved in an accident, and you find passers-by trying to pull out victims even when they are alive. So that could be a big problem.
Yes. One of the problems that was also noticed was that most of the patients got to hospital dead. So then they couldn't even enter into hospital statistics, but rather into the mortuary statistics. And it's realized that most of them died because of how they were transported to the hospital. But if somebody gets involved in an accident and the person is well stabilized and the neck is not moved or the backbone is not moved, then you are likely to have at least things being intact till they get to the hospital. But when there is a movement, then it's likely that the injury could even be worsened.
What can be done in that situation?
Well, for example, if somebody is involved in an accident and there's head injury or there is spinal injury in terms of the neck or the thoracic or the lumbar, it is important to keep the person stable, not to move the neck. If possible, if you can get some towels to keep the neck not moving, because likely that there are fractures of the neck bones which impinge on the spinal cord itself. So if there are these fractures, some of them are loose bones in there, and they could impinge more and probably cause more injury to the spinal cord. And what happens is that, the spinal cord itself is a bundle of nerves, as you have just said. They come through our backbone. And the spinal cord is not necessarily a backbone. The backbone is a number of bones that are stacked on each other. And the spinal cord is an extension of the brain that goes through the spinal cord and the vertebral column. And the nerves come out from the vertebrae and then supply every part of the body. So it means that even our respiratory, right from the thorax, right from to the abdomen, to the sexual organs, to the feet, the legs, every part of the body is actually controlled by nerves. So if for example, the chest, which is the respiratory center, or the ribs, the lungs, if the nerves that supply this place, and it's usually coming from the neck region, if somebody has an accident and there are fractures in the neck, and it's not well taken care of, and the injury becomes worse, that means that respiration is going to be compromised, and before long getting to the hospital, the person dies, because you don't control your respiration, you don't know how you breathe. It's involuntary, you don't just, but there are nerves and other things controlling it. So when those processes are compromised because of compression on the nerve from an accident.
Spinal injuries, and you make 7 points very clear. Now let's talk about treatment of spinal injuries. Is there a temporary or permanent treatment for spinal injuries? If you have a spinal injury, is it there forever?
Well, it depends on what kind of injury you have. Mostly, depending on the level of the injury, the treatment can either be surgical or with medication. There are times that somebody may get involved in an accident and the problem will be at the neck. If the problem is a fracture in the neck that affects the spinal cord, chances are that the person is going to have all the limbs from the top, the arms and the legs, not moving. So it's going to be what we call tetraplegia or quadriplegia. All the limbs are not moving.
So the spinal cord controls us?
It controls everything. So if the accident or the injury is at the lower back or maybe at your backside, then you realize that the lower limbs are not moving. We call that paraplegia. Now, again, even with some of the injuries, because of the fact that the nerves control your bowel movement, your urine, your bladder movement and everything, things that have to do with the retention of urine, constipation, and all these things may come. So managing spinal injury is not just one thing. It's a whole discipline on its own. Depending on what kind of injury the person has, the person is managed, and likewise. If there's a need to go into surgery to repair maybe the vertebra or take off the compression on the spinal cord, then surgery has to be done. If it's just a matter of maybe managing with other physical things, like a lot of people when they are growing up, they talk of pain in the neck, not having had accidents. They talk about pain in their shoulder. Meanwhile, there's no trauma. These things are the commonest things we call spondylosis of the neck or of the lumbar spine, where the vertebral column has developed what we call growths at the end. We call them osteophytes, which end up impinging on the nerves that come out from your spinal cord that are supposed to supply your feet. And then you have numbness in your feet. So anytime there's an injury at a certain level, the problem happens at the levels of the nerve that are lower down your body. So the neck injury affects anything lower down. So if it's affecting your diaphragm, that means that it will result in respiratory compromise. If it's affecting your bowels, it's going to affect probably lead to constipation because your bowel cannot then contract to push things out. It can even affect your bladder and even sometimes sexuality because the nerve that affects or your sexual organs need to have erections and lubrication and all these things are all coming from the spinal cord.
Okay.
So all these things get affected. So management is a holistic thing depending on what kind of injury the person has. If there's a need to help the person in the sexual sense, it has to be done. If there's a need to do surgery, if there's a need even to wear a cervical collar, all these things are different management that are tailored according to the need of the patient.
Okay, we'll come to the statistics very soon, even though you say that we don't have them readily available for Ghana. But if you're not involved in any accident, you're just going about your normal duties, you come to the office, sit down like me here, talk for how many hours, go away. How do you guard against a spinal injury?
Well, I think that here we're talking of same position for a very long time. You sit in the office, and sometimes the chair you're even using is not good for your back because the spinal cord has been made in a certain shape that's supposed to take that shape all the time. Now, if your back is not good enough, the seat you're using is not good enough, then you force the spine into an uncomfortable situation. There are discs in between each vertebral column and the neck. There are discs in between. Sometimes there can be herniation of the disc or shifts or dislocation of some of these discs. And several processes that your positioning is not helping. In that case, with time, there may be changes, and then you start feeling uncomfortable. You start feeling chronic pain at your lower back. And these things have to be looked into. So management of this would therefore look at the ergonomic factors of your workplace, the kind of seat you are using, and all that has to come into place. Even sometimes the kind of pillows you are sleeping on can eventually have effect on your spine.
So then it is important that you demand the right furniture in your office.
That's right.
But if the company is not putting in enough, is this okay so that maybe I can sue Gabriel Bosompim? Is this okay for us?
It has a soft back,
okay.
And you're not using it for a long time.
Okay.
But I'm sure that just put yourself in a position for a very long time, you realize that you don't feel comfortable at your back.
Absolutely.
A lower back.
Okay.
So it's just not comfortable for the shape of the spine.
Okay, let's go for this pretty staggering statistic that I have here. In the UK, we are told that every year around 1,200 people are paralyzed from a spinal cord injury. But, well, we are told that apparently there are 40,000 people living with paralysis at present. 250,000 Americans are spinal cord injured. 52% of spinal cord injured individuals are considered paraplegic and 47% quadriplegic. Approximately 11,000 new injuries occur each year, and 82% are male. 56% of injuries occur between ages 16 and 30. Why men with the higher figures?
Yes, it's interesting to note that it's men because we are men. When it comes to driving, as one of the road traffic accidents that are the highest cause. Another cause would be falling from height, or maybe somebody on horseback. A lot of men get into very aggressive activity, and another cause is sports injuries. People who are into sports may fall heavily and be injured their back. So these are activities that mainly has got to do with trauma from physical activity. So that is the reason why men are more at risk than women all over the world. I mean, even in Ghana, with a study that was done at Confanochi in the 1990s, it was that most of the injuries, people who die from injuries, are men. So it's not only about the road traffic accident, falling from heights and sports injuries, and okay, the diseases are also there, but then it's mostly men because we are more aggressive in driving. Women are more careful when they are driving. Men will not show that we have a lot of testosterone and more adrenaline than so that's basically it. We are involved in more aggressive activity. More men are into
What would a shock do to you? A surprise? Does it affect your spinal coordination?
Yes and no. Okay. Like somebody brings a bad news to you.
Yeah.
No, that would not necessarily affect your, unless you fall. Physically fall on hearing a bad news, then you fall. People may even dive into water. It may be a shallow well or a shallow pond, they don't know. So getting a bad news necessarily won't develop a spinal problem. maybe I think you are talking about neurogenic shock. If you are talking neurogenic shock, that is a different thing.
Okay. And then, our public transport, the buses, for instance, the trotros, some of them are really rickety. You sit in, the drivers don't even pay attention to the speed ramps, and then suddenly, boom. Should we be careful? Should we be mindful of that?
Yes, we should. I think law enforcement must be more aggressive so that we have the right things put in place. We lost a young lady, about 26 years, because she was in a vehicle and there was a head-on collision. She was just sitting here somewhere, and her neck moving forward like that was the end of it. She came to the hospital, neck broken. Every part from the top to the bottom couldn't move. I mean, there were 50-50 chance for her to go into surgery. Eventually, scans, so MRI is done. You could see the neck bones fractured, impinging on the spinal cord. Went to surgery. She came out of surgery, yes, alive, but within a number of weeks, she passed away. Recently, I saw a young man who used to work on my car for some time ago, and I realized his walking had changed. I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, it was a fight, and he got a stab at his back." So the lower back, the lower limbs have been affected. So we have a situation where you're seeing a lot of people are paraplegic because of these accidents and because of acts of violence. Gunshot wounds and all these things are involved. In terms of our transportation system, I think it should be worked on so that our safety should be considered. If you travel to the Europes and Americas, you see the public transport buses, there's a lot of space, I mean, for you to walk around. If there's some space for the people who are disabled, I mean, they easily get onto their buses. But here, we are all squeezed in the trotro like that. If anything happens, and even dragging people out, everybody is trying to save somebody, dragging people out, end up causing more damage. So people,
but they wouldn't know.
Yes,
as far as they're concerned, they're providing
that's right,
some assistance.
because the information is not there. We are not educated, like as we are doing now, educating people as to the fact that when people are involved in injury, road traffic accidents, movement should be done very carefully. You just flip people anyhow, you cause worse problems, and they die before they get to the hospital. That's one of the reasons why they enter mortuary statistics but not hospital statistics, because they are declared dead on arrival. Okay, so yes.
And are you specialists worried that we don't have statistics, current, up-to-date
again,
statistics?
I would say so. Sometimes it depends on the focus of the nation. I think that when it comes to things like maternal mortality, things like HIV, everybody is talking about it, so statistics are available. But you see, we hardly talk about spinal and neurologic things, and so the attention hasn't been there. When that awareness is created, I think that we would look into it and then start getting the statistics. If road traffic accidents are on the high, then it directly impacts on the number of spinal injuries that we're going to have. A lot of people may be dying either from internal bleeding or probably breakages in the spine or the spinal cord that leads to respiratory compromise and death.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bolte, for taking us through the spinal injury.